2025 promises to be a great year for rugby in Africa, with the ultimate qualifying spot fast approaching.
And then after the wedding.
After the wedding.
What do I get in last time? Stop me. Whoever gives an opportunity. This is scary.
Welcome to Life in Rugby, guys. Today we're going to break down the 2025 Rugby Africa Cup and go step by step through every team. With Morocco recently beating rivals Tunisia in the repechage finals, they secured the final spot for this year's Africa Cup. So it's set. This year's tournament will feature the host nation Uganda, defending champion Zimbabwe, as well as Algeria, Namibia, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, and Senegal. And if you're new to the world of rugby, you're probably wondering, where is South Africa? Well, South Africa is simply too good to be playing in this tournament. Rugby World Cup qualification is different from other sport codes. At the Rugby World Cup, in a group of 5 teams, the top 3 teams qualify automatically for the next Rugby World Cup, while the bottom 2 are effectively relegated and must fight their way back in. And in this context, Namibia has to fight its way back into the Rugby World Cup. Now let's start with the host nation, Uganda. Uganda is always talked about because of their presence in sevens rugby. Their speed and fitness from their sevens background make them dangerous in open play, and playing at home will be a massive boost. Let's rewind to July 2024. Uganda, playing in front of their home crowd, started extremely slow against Zimbabwe, but nearly pulled off a remarkable comeback. One player who stood out for us at Life in Rugby, Philip Wokoraj. If the rugbycranes are to make a deep run in the Africa Cup, he'll need to be at his very best. Heading into the 2025 Africa Cup, the rugbycranes have won just 2 of their last 6 test matches. 2 of those losses against Kenya in the Ilgon Cup, the very team they'll be facing later this year on home soil. The numbers don't lie. They've struggled against their biggest East African rivals, and with Kenya being a consistent, strong contender in the Africa Cup, the rugbycranes will have to rise to the occasion. Here's the problem. If Uganda faces a team with dominant set pieces, they will be in trouble. Now with Kenya, we understand it's going to be a physical battle, especially in the tight exchanges and set plays. But the boys in East Africa concede too many penalties and way too many unforced errors. In a crucial competition, you'll pay the price if you don't clean those up. There's an elephant in the room when it comes to the rugbycranes though. The absence of Ivan Magomo, suspended last year for disciplinary issues and stripped of his leadership role. His absence creates a leadership vacuum. It's a distraction the team would rather not have heading into a high-pressure tournament. Being the hosts is a huge advantage, but the truth is you can't just rely on home support alone. The rugbycranes need to prove that they can beat top-tier opposition. Even if they pull off a miracle win against the Kenyan Simbas, they might still have to face defending champion Zimbabwe, and I think that's just a hill too steep for Uganda at the moment. So realistically, their chances of qualification are slim. Next up, big athletes, little L's. Senegal is one of those teams with strong physical players, but when it comes to structured rugby, they don't quite have the tools. Their forwards can literally go toe-to-toe with almost anyone in Africa when it comes to those physical battles. But the problem on the rugby field is everywhere else and everything else. If rugby was about winning collisions, I think Senegal would be a world-class union. They have a growing domestic setup with some players gaining experience in French lower leagues. And I saw that the FFR has recently visited them for various reasons, which is a big step in the right direction. Talking about big steps and big things, Senegal's biggest problem is game management. It's non-existent. Their decision-making under pressure is extremely poor, and they have no real attacking structure, which forces them to rely on individual talent. And quite frankly, guys, it's very unfortunate for them that they have to prepare for Namibia. Namibia had a nightmare tournament last year, and they will have a point to prove this year. And with a new management coming in and a Rugby World Cup to reclaim, I just don't think Senegal will even stand a chance. Not even a miracle can help them. And then there's the unpredictable wild card, Morocco. Morocco is a tricky one to call, hey. They have a solid rugby history. They've been off the radar for far too long though. They have good rugby culture with a history of producing technically sound players. They have the tactical discipline, and I expect a structured game plan with emphasis on set pieces. Now, with French rugby in its golden generation, there's neglected talent laying around, and one wonders whether Morocco will go fishing. It's the norm during this season, by the way, and I won't be surprised if they come with an entirely different team to the Africa Cup. On another note, these Brewers are far too rusty. They've been out of top-level competition for far too long. They lack X-factor players, and it would really be interesting to see how they would even attempt to stop that Zimbabwe backline. Their chances of qualification, unless they really get those passports stated up, I just don't see them getting past Zimbabwe. Now let's travel to the land of the athletic but inexperienced Cote d'Ivoire, the brothers of Didier Drogba. Cote d'Ivoire was once a World Cup team back in 1995, but let's be real, that was a different era. They do have strong, quick, and physically gifted players, and I think they have a young squad that is improving. But like many Eastern and Western African countries, they have no real structure to their game. They lack high-level tactical coaching and struggle in the forward battles. They get dominated in scrums and mauls, so I think they really have no chance. Algeria is an interesting case too. They're actually not that bad. The problem is that they play way too safe. I think they are defensively solid and they are hard to break down with a good set piece, especially the scrums. Now, that thing I said about Morocco, they might go fishing too. I think the win against Kenya last year will give them a much needed confidence boost that they can go all the way this year. The problem with this team is that they have zero attacking ambition, too much kicking, too little creativity, and they lack serious test level depth. The chances of qualification, highly unlikely, no firepower to make it further. Kenya is, guys, I think we need to be honest about Kenya. They are, I think Kenya is the arsenal of our continent's rugby. And I think Kenya should really learn something from Beldad Ogeta's try against Algeria last year. Kenya must learn to go all the way.
Kenya will wear out the forwards, will wear out the backs, and you don't want to do that early on in this game against such an experienced and well-oiled team of the Kenya Simbas.
Well, here comes a fast break once again, and the Simbas showing what makes them strong. That is called Gongayeye, and continues on his way. A last-ditch tackle, but in the end, there will be no... So that's definitely going to leave some scars there. That was sheer brilliance, individual genius here. And wasn't a fluke from last week. Ogeta proving once again he is an A-lister player, going all the way.
So it will be interesting how they approach this year. But so Kenyans are naturally gifted athletes and definitely some of the best conditioned in Africa, if not the best. With their sevens pedigree, like Uganda, they have fast and skillful backs. The biggest problem has always been inconsistency. One game they look amazing, the next they fall apart. So chances of qualification on paper, I think they should be pushing for that automatic Rugby World Cup spot. But we've said that before. And if they don't finally step up, it's another wasted cycle. I tell you what though, if they manage their youth well and create a sustainable pathway, I see them competing seriously in the next cycle if this one is wasted. Look at me falling into that Arsenal trap again. Now let's talk about who I think are the real contenders. I'll start with defending champions, Zimbabwe. If you follow the Bartes Trophy, you will see that the rugby landscape in Africa is on the verge of a new horizon. The amount of quality young stars being produced by Kenya and Zimbabwe means that they have finally caught up at youth level against rivals Namibia. Zimbabwe is producing and stocking up quality, and you cannot look past that. For the first time in years, they actually had a working plan. Last year, in 2024, the Sables through the Sables Trust rolled out their Project Down Under Advisory Committee, who will rally behind their Zimbabwe Sables on their journey to the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia. The advisory committee includes Falcon College All Boy Delaroy Simbada, who featured in the World Rugby Under-20 Trophy in 2012, former Springbok World Cup winning prop Tendai Beast Tawarira, and Karo Sports founder Kiset Chirengende, amongst other notable names. 2024 was a year full of changes for the Sables. Earlier in the year, the Sables announced former Western Province fly half Pete Bernarde to take over from Brendan Dorset as head coach of the Sables. Bernarde vowed to maintain the country's traditional style of rugby, based on flair and speed, but said that the Sables must work on their set-piece frailty if they are to be competitive in the Africa Cup, in which they did. Zimbabwe's perfect season in 2024 cannot just be solely attributed to the advisory committee and the coaches. Let's chat a bit about the players. Zimbabwe has quality and a wealth of competitive minutes under players like Cleopas Kandiona, Tapiwa Mafura, Dylan Utete. Sidestepping sensation Edward Sigauke was instrumental in their under-20 Bartes Trophy campaign and certainly one for the future we all need to keep an eye on. The Sables are in an exciting stage right now, with loose forward, the driller, Tinotenda Masevere, having a man-of-the-match performance against the Blue Bulls in the URC. All the players, with many not even mentioned, have competitive minutes in their bag and certainly will be crucial for their 2025 Africa Cup campaign. On top of that, they added Western Force captain Jan Pryor and Kyle Godwin to their ambitious team, with Ellis Neyman rumored to come in. They generally have a strong talent pipeline, with young players coming in ready to play and blending in with experienced players like Hilton Mudareke. With a clicking and improved coaching setup and direction through management and advisory committees, Zimbabwe is a strong contender. Last year, Namibia sent a team dominated by domestic league players. So the only team standing between Zimbabwe and that automatic qualification spot is a full-strength Namibian team. The contender to beat. This is the channel about Namibian rugby. So if you want to know all things Namibian rugby, please like and subscribe. Let's chat about the land of the brave. The Welwitschias is Africa's best nation outside of the Springboks. They've dominated this stage of the tournament for years, and unless something crazy happens, they are poised to win again. I will explain later. So Namibia has participated in 7 consecutive Rugby World Cups without registering a victory, and they will be hoping to go to Australia in 2027 to finally make a statement. Like their local rivals, Namibia has undergone significant changes. Former Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee parted ways with the Namibia Rugby Union late last year. Chrisander Botha, the former fullback, has taken over as head coach with assistance from Jaco Engels, Rowan Ketshoff, De La Harp, and David Philander. To further strengthen our structures, Namibia recruited former Saracens loose forward and former Namibia captain Jacques Burger as director of rugby. Despite all the changes, 2024 was a challenging year for Namibia rugby. The under-20 team looked out of place at the Bartes Trophy, and the senior national team fell short against Portugal and was overpowered by Zimbabwe in the semi-finals of the 2024 Africa Cup. However, key players like Prince Hausup, Divan Rousseau, Tian Swanepoel, Gershwin Mouton, Damian Stevens, Cleven Lobsher, Vian Conradi, Hilarius Kisting, and others weren't part of the team last year, which left a huge gap in our lineup. Pete Bernarde isn't the only one vowing to return to traditional rugby. Chrisander Botha is focused on getting back to that Namibian DNA, a style where Namibia is more affluent with running with the ball rather than adopting the kicking game that has dominated in recent years. Namibia heads into the 2025 Africa Cup with new structures and an inexperienced coaching setup, but also with the hunger to make things right. After years of behind-the-scenes issues and infighting within the Namibia Rugby Union, it seems the storm has finally calmed. And with Jacques Burger in the setup, the Life and Rugby team can be confident that those in it for the free trips and buffets have finally left. The Namibia Rugby Union have partnered up with telecommunications giant MTC to come up with a regionals competition that aims to strengthen the depth of talent within the senior men's and under-20 squads, but also foster regional pride and unity, reinforcing Namibia's rugby pathway development. The Namibia Rugby Union has also announced fixtures against South African franchises Boland, Blue Bulls, and Stormers to prepare for the 2025 Africa Cup. So Namibia boasts one thing above all the other African teams. They definitely know how to win the Africa Cup. But one thing is for sure, rugby in Africa is evolving. With no clear favorites, it would be interesting to see who clinches the title. Cheers guys, see you next time.